Australia's Federal Health Minister, Labor's Mark Butler, has replied to one of my letters. G'day, it's Charles Mackenzie, President of Infected Blood Australia, and here I am holding a letter from our nation's Health Minister. And just 8 weeks ago, I wrote to Australia's Health Minister, Mark Butler, asking that he immediately make financial assistance available for victims of Australia's worst treatment scandal. I'm speaking of people who received the haemophilia treatment Factor VIII, which infected 1,750 Australians with HIV and hepatitis C from these tainted Factor VIII treatments. And I also asked for financial assistance for other people who received contaminated blood, like thousands of people who were infected with the deadly virus Hep C from blood transfusions. Okay? Now, financial assistance has been made available to victims all around the world. The contaminated blood scandal was global. There's been assistance for victims in Canada for decades, in Ireland for decades, and in the UK. And in fact, England has now made compensation available on top of financial assistance, and they're calling it manslaughter. Okay? What happened with the contamination of blood supplies around the world, the fact that governments knowingly allowed contaminated blood products and treatments to be distributed to patients. So we asked Mark Butler, would he do something for the Australian victims of this infected blood scandal? Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to read out Mark Butler's letter, okay, and I'll comment at certain points to explain what our position is. So, Mark Butler, in this letter, he's doing exactly what his predecessor did. This is the Liberal Health Minister, Greg Hunt. He's trying to distance himself from the scandal by getting his underlings, his staff, to write the letters. Like this letter here is written by one of his staff, Mary Warner. So so Mark Butler can try and put distance because he knows that his government are in criminal jeopardy, okay? And that he's going to end up being criminally prosecuted. This is why he's so frightened. So I'm going to read out this letter, and it says, Dear Mr. Mackenzie, thank you for your correspondence of 25th July 2022 to the Minister for Health and Aged Care, the Honourable Mark Butler MP, regarding financial assistance for haemophiliacs and Australians who are infected through the nation's blood supply. The Minister has asked me to reply. Isn't that interesting? Why would Australia's Health Minister ask one of his staff to reply? Why wouldn't he, reply himself? And why did Greg Hunt do the same thing? Do you think it's because they know they're in criminal trouble? I think so. Okay, let's read on. It says here, I note that you have previously written to express your concerns on this issue. Yeah, I've been writing for 30 years, so well done for noting that. The Australian government understands the impact on patients, their families and the Australian community of HIV and hepatitis C infections acquired from the blood supply in the 1980s and continues to be committed to eliminating bloodborne viruses as a public health threat. Well, Mary, who's writing this on behalf of her corrupt boss, this guy who's involved in a criminal cover-up, Australia's Health Minister, Mary, you're wrong. You're saying here that you're talking about infections from the 1980s. You're wrong, Mary. We're talking about infections from basically from the 1950s, the 1960s, the 1970s, the 1980s, the 1990s, right up to 2018, Mary. We have people who've said that they've been infected with hepatitis C from blood transfusions up till 2018, Mary. And we've got scores of people who are infected in the 2000s, Mary. So I see the trick about the 1980s thing. You're trying to make it all sound like really ancient history. We're not going to fall for that one, Mary, and neither will the public when they find out that tens of thousands of Australians have been infected with the deadly virus hepatitis C from blood transfusions from the inception of our blood supply from the 1940s right up to current day. And it says here, as you are aware, the 2004 Senate Community Affairs References Committee extensively examined the policies and practices of the Australian Red Cross Lifeblood. Well, I'm not aware of that, Mary. I was the one that forced that Senate inquiry. It was a Senate inquiry that was staffed by corrupt bureaucrats. There were no lawyers involved. This wasn't an inquiry, okay? This was a sham. And I forced it because you guys were denying me a royal commission. So I went with a Senate inquiry so victims could make their statements and give their submissions and not be sued for what they said, because under Senate rules of their Senate inquiries, you're allowed to make a submission, and if it's accepted as public, you can have it published on the internet, Mary. But you know what you guys did? You accepted our public submissions from tainted blood victims, but then you made sure that the Senate didn't publish them on the internet as public to help you with your cover-up. And you said the Senate inquiry extensively examined the Red Cross and CSL's practices. No, you didn't. There were no lawyers involved. And in fact, you allowed CSL to lie under oath about importing and mixing foreign blood into their blood products, which killed 1,400 Australians, Mary. So, stop trying to bullshit us, okay? So, she goes on here, the committee's report, Hepatitis C and the blood supply in Australia, found that the most effective way to address viral contamination in the Australian context was to improve access to services, education of medical personnel, and support research efforts to develop more effective treatments. Well, Mary, we haven't got the services yet. This inquiry said there should be more services in 2004. We're still waiting on the counselling, Mary. We're still waiting on the home help. We've had people who died with that help, home help, Mary. Friends of mine who I bloody loved, Mary. I want you jailed, Mary. You and your boss. Because you're lying to us, Mary. And you're using our taxes to pay your way, Mary. So it basically, she just waffles on here. Okay. Basically saying, and she says here, I would like to reiterate that it is a priority of the government to provide all Australians with access to affordable healthcare. Comprehensive care and treatment services are available for patients with haemophilia. Well, yes, so they should be. They should be able to get product to treat their haemophilia. But that's available in first world countries right around the world. But where's the counselling for their tainted blood? Where is the dental? Where is the dental care for teeth that just implode and explode? You've asked haemophiliacs who you've knowingly infected with HIV and Hep C to pay all of the costs themselves. You're not providing any dental. You're not providing any counselling. You're not providing any financial assistance. You're not providing any home help. You're not providing anything. But you write these letters responding to my letter asking you to immediately turn on financial assistance by basically bullshitting us. And saying that there have been investigations that have found everything's hunky-dory when that's a complete lie. Now, we knew that Mark Butler would have one of his staff send a letter like this. And we know because we're being advised by lawyers, okay? And we have a British lawyer called Michael Imperato, who's been very good. He's advising us on where we're going. Where we're going is we're going to have a Royal Commission. And we're going to ask the courts very soon to look at a judicial review because we've had enough. We've got haemophiliacs who are infected with HIV and hepatitis C and they're living with liver cancer and they're getting no help whatsoever. And if they're English, if they're a Canadian, if they were any other bloody nationality, they'd be helped. But because they're Australian, they're not being helped. And because we've got corrupt health officials and because we've got corrupt health ministers like this man, okay, he writes us absolute garbage. But notice the coward that Mark Butler is. He did not sign the letter himself. No. He had one of his staff, Mary. Mary, your boss is a coward. You know why he did that to you, Mary? Because he knows this is all going to go to court. So he can say, I didn't see that letter. This is the same thing that health ministers in the UK have been saying when they get on the stand. I didn't see that letter. I wouldn't have said that. We're not having it. We've got people dying without help. We're not having these games. Mark Butler, you have just cooked your career. Do you understand? You have just ruined your political career. This guy had ambitions, okay, about being Australia's environmental crusader, and he had ambitions about ending up working in his favoured place of employment, the UN. Okay, he was going to end up in the UN, Australia's ambassador probably, the UN, everything about overseas. But we need you to do your job here, and you're involved in a cover-up. You know that children with haemophilia were knowingly given contaminated blood treatments. I have met with your office. I've met with your Labor Shadow Health Minister predecessor. Okay, you and the Labor Party know what's happened. You were the ones that privatised the Commonwealth Serum Laboratories, CSL, which made these haemophilia treatments. You privatised them in 1994 so they could get away with what they'd done, Mark Butler, with killing 1,400 Australians. Okay, 1,400 haemophiliacs were murdered by CSL, Mark Butler. And thousands of other Australians have been infected with the deadly virus hepatitis C, okay, from blood transfusions, Mark Butler. And you have told us today, or yesterday rather, in your letter, that you'd be doing nothing to help. So this is what I say to you on behalf of Infected Blood Australia. We will see you in court, Mark Butler, and we will see you squirm.